If you haven't heard the news, after 100 years in business, Sam Ash is closing. Today, we're going to talk about the reasons that probably led to their demise and what it means for the musical instrument industry. Stick around. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee with Alamo Music in San Antonio, Texas, and you can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos. If you want to support our channel, visit our spring store link below for custom swag and check out our podcast. It's called the Fretboard Confessional, wherever you get your podcasts. So we're talking about Sam Ash, and if you are a musician and have shopped in various music stores, it's likely that at some point or another you visited their website or you visited one of their many brick and mortar stores. I believe at the high end there were 48 stores or more than that throughout the country. Based out of the Northeast around New York, Sam Ash has been in business for 100 years, and it's come as quite a shock to many in the industry that they are closing. Now, it wasn't too long ago that Sammy Ash actually passed away after a fight with cancer. And at that time, there were no indications that there was anything really going on with the company. But clearly there were problems that they haven't been able to rectify. And I wanted to kind of talk about them and what that means for the industry at large. Are we primed to see a failure of a lot of stores because of this demise of Sam Ash? Or is this more isolated? Or could it just simply be a symptom of the very difficult nature of our industry? Let's get into it. So, if you haven't been living under a rock or you pay attention to news on Reddit and things, then you would know that a few weeks ago, Sam Ash shuttered a bunch of stores kind of overnight. According to the reports that came out, they closed a lot of their very high rent locations, Manhattan, Chicago, Orlando, things like that. I think in an attempt to kind of right the ship, if you will. And what that means is that it's a clear indication that their brick and mortar stores and the expense of running those was a problem when it came to overhead. Now, when those stores closed, according to reports from employees, they all kind of got notified in those locations via email that they were no longer Sam Ash employees. They were now working for a liquidation company who'd be handling things during the liquidation of that store until that was done. Things have kind of progressed after that. So clearly that move wasn't enough to prevent the failure of the company as a whole. And so the news came out last week, I believe, that Sam Ash was closing all of its remaining stores. And unless it found a buyer, it was going to cease to exist in all forms, whether brick and mortar or online. Now, here in San Antonio, we've had a local Sam Ash for a long, long time. It exists on a major highway here on the opposite side of Guitar Center, which, by the way, if you've been paying attention, that's not an uncommon thing either. It seemed that as Sam Ash began to grow its brick and mortar presence throughout the country in the early 90s, that Guitar Center was eager to open up shop right across the door. Yeah, if that doesn't just smack you in the face, I don't know what does. So that's what's been going on for a long, long time. That's how it's been here. In a bit of irony, at least in San Antonio, Sam Ash opened up in the location that was previously occupied by Mars Music, which met a similar demise about 20 years ago. Now, if you aren't familiar with Mars Music was actually started by the guy who had started Office Depot and felt that they could take that same blueprint and translate it into musical instrument stores, and they expanded very, very quickly, and they shut down even quicker. I think it was a 4-year run that Mars Music had, and then they were gone. The fact of the matter is that this industry that I work in, that Cooper works in, that maybe many of you who watch our channel work in, is a difficult industry. On average, in the past, and this is historical going back about 100 years, most musical instrument stores have lasted about 20 years tops. And that's because of things like people running the store and then retiring and not having anyone to turn it over to, making bad decisions, not moving with the economy or the industry as things changed and developed, a bunch of reasons. So I have to say, hats off to Sam Ash for lasting 100 years. That in and of itself is pretty impressive. Here at Alamo Music, we've been here for 95 years this year, but we have never had a nationwide footprint of brick and mortar stores. And I'm going to tell you, we never will. And that is actually, I think, what was a big part of what did Sam Ash in. In fact, what we can see in our industry is that there's been a lot of challenges that have come with e-commerce. And it's actually not just the musical instrument industry that's been affected by this. As Amazon grew, many of us remember reading articles about the problems that Walmart, one of the biggest retailers in the world, had as Amazon's e-commerce outpaced Walmart's own brick and mortar sales and their own online sales. This is what came to haunt Sam Ash. According to industry suppliers, there's a report out that to handle a brick and mortar location for Sam Ash stores, on average, they had to have a break-even point of $6 million per month. That's a very difficult thing to do in local brick and mortar sales. And what they had going from their website was evidently not enough to prop up the rest of the company. In effect, we now live in an area where, let me put it frank, you had big stores come into areas, open up back in the 90s and the early 2000s, before e-commerce really became a huge presence in this industry. And those locations largely closed down mom and pop shops. Okay, well now we've come to the point where the internet is closing down those large brick and mortar retailers. We're seeing it across industries, not just in this, but in musical instrument sales. Here's what I can tell you. It costs so much to ship a guitar, to ship a keyboard. Amps are pretty expensive, particularly tube amps. They're pretty heavy, but it costs a certain amount to ship those. If you have a singular presence like Sweetwater, for instance, which is the industry leader, you have one location and you are doing all of your marketing and all of your sales out of there, then there is an efficiency in that. And the amount of overhead that you have is limited because you don't have all of these rents and all of these salaries and paid positions across all of these different states. It becomes a juggernaut to manage. And with the internet, there's less and less payoff to do it. It also means that a retailer like Sweetwater, for instance, can have a lot of SKUs in a warehouse and put them on their website without actually having to have a hook for every single one of them. There's an efficiency in that on its own. There's a similar thing going on in Europe with Thomann. Now, what does that mean in our industry as a whole? Does that mean that brick and mortar is dead? No. I do think it means the death knell of large company brick and mortar. And I'm looking at Guitar Center when I say that. They have a new CEO. They're trying to figure some things out. They've long had struggles. And, you know, when I look at it and this is just my opinion, folks, when I look at it and I see where their struggles have been, I don't think it's a much different problem than what Sam Ash experienced. High rents, high leases to have stores that aren't generating the amount of income they need in order to support that staff, to support that location, while most sales are happening online, which means you should really, really invest in your website. This is why we take photos of a lot of our high-end guitars. That's why Sweetwater does the same thing. And for the life of me, I don't know why Guitar Center doesn't. Not that I'm trying to give them any advice. So brick and mortar in that large sense, I think, is going away. Unless they can figure out a way to keep the overhead low. What I think that means, though, is that there's more room for very specialized, focused brick and mortar stores. We try to pride ourselves on giving you guys the very best advice by reaching out through mediums like this to people that, and I have this conversation a lot, increasingly live in areas of the country where there is no more music store left, where the mom and pop shops have closed and the nearest Guitar Center is 200 miles away and they don't have any of the stuff that you want to try anyway. And so long ago, we started doing these videos to say, here are some cool things. We can't review every single guitar that's out there. I wish we could, but maybe one day we'll have the capacity to do that. But in the meantime, we can focus on things that we know we like, that we think you should know about. And in the process, we meet a lot of people, we make a lot of friends, and we're able to get you the instruments that you need. I think that is our specialty. And I think there's a lot of music stores like Chicago Music Exchange, Music Villa, Casino Guitars, Groon's Guitars, right? That have this specialty in some way, shape, or form, right? George Groon is an expert on vintage instruments and in acoustic guitars, and like us, collaborates with major manufacturers like Martin to build unique things. Chicago Music Exchange has the Wall of Paul, and if you're looking for something unique and vintage, they're likely going to have it, or their own cool exclusive. You can say the same thing about Music Villa, Music Zoo, Casino Guitars, Norm's Rare Guitars, a slew of celebrities going there looking for things for a reason. None of that is going to get replaced by the internet because it can't. That's unique. It's different. It's special. So just as brick and mortar locations had its shortcomings, a model like Sweetwater it has its limitations, and I think they're aware of that. They do a very, very good job, and I think they'd love to address those limitations if they could. But at the end of the day, there's only certain things that are going to be served by a local music store for local musicians, and companies that continue to try to have what is, I think, an outdated model by and large, the large footprint, large store, are going to go the way of Sam Ash and Bed Bath & Beyond and Forever 21. And you can just keep naming large big box retailers that are no longer around. So there's probably a lot more to it. I will say, for everybody that's been working in one of these stores, I really feel for you, because I find working in this industry is awesome. I like that I'm able to marriage things that I want to do professionally with things that I'm passionate about. And for many, particularly musicians that are playing, having a gig at a music store is really an ideal situation. And so for many people, they're losing their jobs. I think our local store, with their terrible liquidation discounts, they have a time frame of 6 weeks, and then those people won't be working there anymore. And so I hate to see that. I hate to see any music instrument business go out of business. But I do, as an aside, have a Sam Ash story. I have two, actually. One was not a great experience. I went to Sam Ash before I ever worked here. I had a guitar stolen. Some of you all know that story. I had money from the theft of those guitars, and I walked into the local Sam Ash here ready to throw down, make myself feel better about being violated in theft with a very expensive guitar. But when I finally found an employee to talk to, he wouldn't get it off the wall for me. And it was kind of antagonistic of like, are you going to pay for it? I don't want to just get it down. And I do kind of get that, but at the same time, I was ready to buy. And I told him, it's okay. I've got $5,000. I'll go spend it elsewhere. And I did. So, let that be a lesson for anybody who works in any kind of music store. Never prejudge. You never know who's going to come drop a substantial amount of money on something, and always just treat people really, really well. Now, my other story is a really good one with a kind of a weird twist. After I was working here, we've been doing YouTube videos for a while. I was setting up a mixing board, and I needed adapters that we didn't have, and I went to Sam Ash, and wouldn't you know it, they had them. They had every single adapter I needed in their very substantial pro audio section. I didn't have to order it. It was great. And I was able to get the installation done that day. The problem is I came back into work on Monday, and everyone was like, so we heard you were at Sam Ash over the weekend. And I'm just like, I can't walk into Sam Ash without like the internet knowing about it. Was it a Reddit post? Like, what's going on? Anyways, so Sam Ash is gone from what we know, unless they get a builder or a buyer. I would be surprised if someone does that for the brand, but you never know. That might happen. It might live on as part of some other internet domain, much like Z-Sounds became part of AMS. Who knows? It could be another GC property like Music and Arts when it's all said and done. But for now, they're closing. And if you have one in your area and that's been your primary music store, I'm sorry. But if you ever need anything, there's plenty of us independents around that pride ourselves at trying to make sure that you guys get the things that you need and all of the right advice and information. So let me know your thoughts, your Sam Ash stories, and what you think about the changes in the industry and maybe the opportunities that smaller shops may have in some of these locations. So I invite you to comment below. If you're new to our channel, subscribe, turn on notifications, like our videos, and keep playing guitar. We'll see you next time.